Nithin Ramachandra from the NR Hour Sports Show. This is episode 695 with Larra Overton. She's a Colts reporter and she does a lot of stuff with ESPN. She's also ESPN analyst and goes in depth with all about the Colts. And I'm really looking forward to this interview. And obviously, the Colts just finished their season, and the NFL season is now over from the Super Bowl yesterday. So, first of all, how are you and your family doing, Larra? And I'm glad that we finally made this happen. You're such an inspiration. I love what you do, and I'm glad that you're on the show.
Well, I appreciate you so much. It's an honor to be asked, and I'm glad that we could take time to do this, especially on what's such, an exciting week coming off the Super Bowl. Everyone kind of preparing to go into what will undoubtedly be a busy NFL offseason. But family is great. Appreciate your asking, and everyone's doing well and, staying hunkered down. Fortunately, like right here, all of my family's pretty nearby. I'm in Indianapolis. They're all in Southern Indiana or Louisville. So that makes it nice when, some of the opportunities we've been able to at least get together with our small little group of family, my siblings and their spouses and my parents and all of that. So it's been since Christmas since I've really gotten to see them. So hopefully look forward to getting together and getting to see them here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so I had a couple of Colts players on my show, so we'll get to some of them. But
Great.
first, for you, when did you get interested in the sports industry? Obviously, women in sports is growing. I love what I'm seeing here right now. But for you, when you got started in your journey, when did you realize that you wanted to be in the sports industry as a reporter? And who is that one person that you looked up to?
I think that I always just assumed that sports was part of life because my parents both coached when I was growing up. So every day after school, before I was involved in sports myself, I'd tag along to their practices. My mom coached cheerleading at the high school and collegiate level. My dad coached track and field. So I was always going around with them. So to me, it was just part of our family dynamic, as much of a family tradition as, family vacations or holidays or whatever it happens to be. And my mom coached cheerleading at the University of Louisville when I was growing up. So one of those early experiences for me was sitting on the sidelines at University of Louisville football and basketball games. And this is the peak of
Right.
University of Louisville basketball. And so it was such an exciting time. And to me, I loved always being in the thick of it, being right in the middle of everything. It was so exciting, especially to have that opportunity as a young kid. That's so unique and something that I certainly took for granted. I thought all kids got to do that, right? Just kind of sit at the end of bench and do those types of things. And when I started exploring career options, always have loved reading and writing. And to me, what I first thought I wanted to do was more written journalism, magazine, newspaper format, and still that's at the foundation of everything I do. And that certainly is still a strong interest in terms of the journalism I study from other people, being sure to read a ton of newspaper articles, magazine articles, reading The Athletic and different things like that. Well, that was right around high school. And I was looking into certainly doing journalism and was interested in, at first, I thought politics sounded kind of cool. And then we started to see more and more women on the sidelines. And I just thought this is so cool because it reminded me of the opportunity I had when I was young, when I was a kid, and I would be on the sidelines. So that certainly was something that piqued my interest in seeing more and more of those opportunities. So I went to Indiana and I ran track and cross country there. Again, sports, always part of it. So I had such a great opportunity to compete at the Big Ten level in track and cross country. I was a middle distance runner, so primarily 800, 1500 and a mile, and
Wow.
then also get a great journalism education from Indiana. And I took those things together and really looked at all options. And it's such a competitive industry that coming out of school, I didn't want to limit myself into saying I'm only going to apply for sports jobs. Although that was really what I wanted to do, I knew that I would probably have to get my feet wet on the news side and whatever opportunity came along. So I sent out resume tapes everywhere. And my first job, my first real job in the business, was working as an associate producer on the morning show at Fox 41 WDRB, which is in my hometown, Louisville area. And I'd been an intern there. So it was a fantastic opportunity because the news director, Barry Fulmer, and the assistant news director, Jen Keeney, basically said, we know you want to be on air, we know you want to do sports. Here's what you can do. You can come in and you can be the associate producer on the morning show. And then on nights and weekends, come in and help our sports department out. So much credit to the guys in the sports department at WDRB who helped me, learn how to edit and shoot. And, I had the basics, but I didn't know those things well enough to be ready for an opportunity to be on air, in a top 50, top 75 kind of market. So started honing those skills and eventually put together enough of a resume tape that landed me my first opportunity to do sidelines for Big Ten Network.
Wow. So for you, what have you learned as a journalist? Obviously, from the last year, we went through something that we'd never been through before with the pandemic and with the sport shutting down. So for you, what have you learned? And you got married recently, right?
I
So
did.
congrats on
Thank
that.
you so
I
much.
saw that on Instagram. So, but what have you learned though as a journalist? And obviously, what's being married like now?
It's really funny because last year when everything shut down, I was on a stretch of traveling. I think it was 8 consecutive weeks. So it wasn't like 8 weeks straight I was gone, but I had trips scheduled in 8 week, across 8 different weeks. So I was gone such a significant part of that time because we were doing a lot of our off-season production for our off-season series, which is we have With the Next Pick, which covers the draft. We were doing Colts Life, where we follow our players to their hometowns. And then I was also doing quite a bit of freelance work because February and March, that's the indoor track season. So I was working with ESPN and SEC Network on broadcasts of track coverage and doing all of that. So between all of those different things, I had all of these trips. And I land in Albuquerque for the NCAA Indoor Track Championship. And we are there starting to go around, talk to athletes, talking to coaches. They're like, we have no idea if we want to compete. It seems like, hey, we're already here. Why not just let us run? We've already done all of this. We have athletes who are 5th-year seniors or who this is their last year of eligibility, worked so hard to get here. Like, we really wanted to have the opportunity to compete. So it was devastating when everything was canceled because of the COVID precautions and everything. So I called my husband. I'd gotten on a flight. I think I left our house around 4 a.m. I got on a flight at 6 a.m., went through Dallas, Albuquerque, and then got there. And within about 2 hours, knew that I was basically going to turn around and come home. And I called him. I said, hey, I'm on my way home. He said, well, what do you mean? Like tomorrow? And I said, no. Today, the meet's off. And then the other trips that we'd had, I was on like week 7 of travel. And then the other trips that we'd had had scheduled for those couple of weeks following with the Colts, those had been, all of our scouts are being pulled off the road. So none of that was happening. And he said, you mean you're coming home? And I said, oh yeah, like for good. Like we're probably not even going to go back into the offices. We're all going to be working from home. And he said, are you serious? And this is the longest we've been in the same, city living together since we'd been dating. So I said, oh yeah, I joked. I said, you're really going to figure out if you want to marry me now because I am home. You don't get rid of me for like 2 and 3 days a week when I make these trips. So we had certainly like a good laugh about it. And I mean, in between I'm going to take both of your questions. I think with everything, both planning a wedding during a pandemic and then also doing this job during a pandemic, you just get really creative and you find ways to make things work. I think that the biggest part of this is, although we can't do the things as we plan them to be or as we've done them before, there's always another way to find how to get things done, as long as you're adaptable and you're willing and you're creative and you also are open-minded enough to listen to other people. I think that's one of the biggest things for me in this period of time was having such a great circle of people within our building, really talented, brilliant people on our production staff to be able to make things work and figure out new ways to do a TV show, to cover a draft, to cover training camp, all those different things. And then also colleagues across the league. I mean, I can't tell you how many text messages I went back and forth with other team reporters in the league. Hey, how are you guys finding ways to do this? I'm very fortunate that I was welcomed with open arms thanks to an introduction from my good friend Caroline Can. Caroline was the reporter here in Indianapolis before I was, and then she was with the Carolina Panthers for a season. And she introduced me. She had a great network of women who are all reporters across the NFL, all different team reporters. And each of our roles looks a little bit unique based on the organization you're working with, of course, but the foundation of what we do is very similar. So it's been so valuable to be able to reach out to those women and pick their brains or just, vent when we needed to be about, oh, man, this isn't working. We're trying to find a way to do this or that, or the struggles we were facing. So to me, it was really knowing the people to reach out to. And also, I think for us as a production staff here within our Colts content and production department is playing off of one another's strengths, knowing, how we can work with each other and what we can each do to pitch in and still continue to execute and create great content and produce a great product. And that's from last March when we were able to film at least a few of our Colts live series and still be able to produce those over the course of the off season going into the season when, hey, we're not going to be allowed down on the field. And how does that look? And from a radio broadcast, because I'm our sideline reporter for our radio coverage on our Colts radio network. Well, we weren't able to travel this season because of the restrictions and limitations and precautions. So, I mean, such a credit to all of our engineers behind the scenes who figured out how we could call a playoff game that was happening in Buffalo while we were safe in Indianapolis. It's just miraculous, all the different people who pitched in. And I think it's just such a credit to, and you find this across the business,
Yeah.
how willing people are to lift each other up and support one another in those times. And that kind of happened the same thing when I was planning a wedding, where fortunately our photographer was a family friend. Our videographer is a guy who used to work right here in the building with
Oh,
the
wow.
Colts. The caterers were incredible. It's the girl who I know well, and all the ways that they were able to adapt and kind of make things kind of easier, or offer suggestions for things. But I think overall, it's just a willingness to be adaptable and a willingness to, call the audible and change the play at the line of scrimmage when necessary.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Caroline, that's another one who got married too. Caroline
She
Fraser.
did a month before I did.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
funny. But yeah, so speaking of connections, obviously in this business is all about connecting and making networking. And I had one of your friends on recently, Susie Gurkerich. She was on the
She's
show. And,
awesome.
yeah, she's amazing. And we had fun during that interview. So for you, what's it like making that connections in the sports industry? Like, you remind me of Laura Rutledge and Aaron
I
Andrews.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah. So what's it like just connecting with them and the other reporters that you work with in this industry?
That's
It's a
such a
really
high compliment. Yeah, well, one of the things that I have to say with someone like Susie, she has carved out such a cool niche within sports and style. She's taken this hybrid of the two things that she has such an incredible passion for and such great knowledge of, and it's something that other people weren't doing. This is something that's unique to her. So I think that that's one thing that for those who are breaking into this business, look at those opportunities. That's something that you can always do. And it sets yourself apart from maybe what someone else is doing. And Susie is so fun. Her social media is one of the best to follow with how creative she is with everything that she does. The relationships are invaluable. I mean, it has been so incredible to have people from the beginning of my career that I've connected with, maintained connections with, new relationships that have been formed as a result of these different experiences that I have. My very first mentor in the business is a woman named Stacy Pates. She was the Pacers reporter and studio host, and she is like a big sister to me. And she's one who I always knew, no matter what, if I hadn't talked to her, and it's been months, it doesn't matter. I could pick up the phone, I could call her, ask her advice, ask her for, what I should do in a certain situation. And, that goes for anything from, which blazer should I wear for this, to, oh, I'm exploring what, opportunity next, or if you're debating between maybe two jobs, or how I should handle this particular interview, different things like that. So Stacy is one who I always really, really look to, who has been such a mentor to me and truly like a big sister. I mean, there are so many. It is so very cool. And even in these strange COVID times, when I would see a certain reporter like Stacey Dales with NFL
Yeah.
Network is just one of the great human beings. I would see her just on a Zoom call, and we'd, hop on a side text and,
Yeah.
and trade text. So on the few occasions where I actually got to see her here at a game, it's so wonderful. I mean, and that's one of the things that relationships, whether it's within your colleagues, those who are journalists around you, male and female, no matter what, I cherish those. It's also the best part of working in this business is also the relationships you form with coaches, scouts, players. To me, that's one thing working within an organization that I've come to appreciate more and more each and every season. I learn so much from each and every conversation that I have with Frank Reich. I have an opportunity to talk with him each week and sometimes multiple times a week, depending on how the schedules go. It's usually twice a week, usually on Monday and then also either Saturday or Sunday over on the game days, either the day before a game or about 4 hours before kickoff. And you start to see how people open up to you when you're able to have those consistent interactions, whether that's on Zoom or whether it's face to face in person, whatever it is. And I so value not only their willingness to share their time, but also to help make us
Right.
better. I just learned so much from them in how all of our coaching staff, how our general manager, Chris Ballard, all of our players, we're so incredibly fortunate that we have a lot of really just high character guys who are so dynamic, so personable, so fun. And in just watching their interactions with the media as well makes me so much better.
Right.
And it's really fun to cultivate and develop those relationships because as a journalist, that's one of the things that you're going to um, create that credibility by doing is having those strong relationships, having the athletes, having coaches, having scouts, GMs, whoever it is, when they know that they can confide in you or give you certain information that's going to help you do your job better. That's I mean the greatest compliment really that you can have. So to me it's relationships across the board, whether it's from my peers who are in this business, who do such a fantastic job, and those people who you mentioned too, people like Laura Rutledge, something that I admire in watching her. So I'm always looking to get better, whether that's from listening to our players interactions with the media or coaches and how they interact, even if it's a interview I'm not a part of, but also in watching different reporters and different hosts across the league, across the business. Like Laura is so dynamic and
Yeah.
versatile. And you can plop her in the middle of hosting like a halftime show, in the middle of a game, in the middle of an event. She can do sidelines. She can do NFL Live. She can do a studio show. The versatility is so critical in what we're doing right now. And that's where that willingness to learn and adapt. I know we're all so sick of hearing the word adapt. We've heard it so frequently over the past 12 months. But truly, the open mindedness to not just branding yourself as, oh, I'm only an analyst, or oh, I'm only a host, or I'm only a sideline reporter, or whatever it happens to be. And she's one of those who I think really embodies the being so multifaceted and being incredibly versatile and being able to translate that skill set across many platforms. And I just kind of love watching. There are so many people who do such a fantastic job of exactly that. And it's so fun to be able to not only be colleagues and peers with these people, but also be able to support them, encourage them, root for them in their journeys. And one of the awesome things about being in sports media is how unique each and every person's journey is. So you can't look at where someone is now and where you were or they were. It's just never going to, it's not like a horse race, right? You're not constantly jockeying for position against other people. Your path is completely and utterly unique. So that's why you see, as competitive of a business as it is, it's not so much that you're competing against anyone else. You're competing within yourself to simply be as good as you can be and be better than you were the previous day, the previous week, whatever it happens to be. So that's one of the really interesting things too, is celebrating your own journey and the uniqueness of that, but then also the opportunity to celebrate and uplift those around you.
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm sure. I also had other like Indianapolis connections on the show. I'm sure you know them: Taylor Tannenbaum, Rachel Berry. I had on, and
Yeah,
Aaliyah Hassan. They all, and I think Rachel. Oh, Rachel told me that she looks up to you as a reporter.
I
So
appreciate that. Thank you so much.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
Taylor is a very good friend of mine as well. She's fantastic. She's one of the things I always admire about Taylor is she's so witty, like especially on her like social media. She finds this way to strike a balance with like her quick wit and then also her sports savvy, which is so fun. And that's one of the great things for young journalists in this business is the opportunity to utilize your social media platforms to showcase some of your personality along with your work and make sure that you're allowing people to see what makes you unique and the unique voice that you have. One of the people who I think about doing that the best of anyone is Dan Orlovsky. I mean, look at the way, I mean, look at his ascension and what he's done as a media personality, because not only is he just brilliant in how he's able to assess and analyze and break down film and explain what happened and why it happened, but he also does it in like this very like
Yeah, he's
witty, like
yeah.
engaging manner. So I think that that's one thing that it wasn't necessarily around when I started in the business, and it's been something for me to try to navigate and learn a little bit more about. And that's such a strength of like young journalists, is that you guys have grown up with it, right? So that's really a great way to embrace your own voice and kind of create your own platform.
Yeah. So before we get to the Colts team, I want to ask you about yesterday. A lot of history was made in the Super Bowl. First was Sarah Thomas being the first female ref. I love that, and obviously the Tampa Bay being the first team to host the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. So what was your overall thoughts on the Super Bowl yesterday? Even though the Chiefs couldn't do anything, pretty much the Buccaneers defense held them. So what was your just overall thoughts on the history that was made yesterday?
Well, I think, when you point out, of course, how important diversity was and how well highlighted and showcased it was, from Sarah Thomas, and then, also, the Bucks coaching staff, not only with the females
Yeah.
that they have on staff, but also having two African American
Yep.
coordinators and the history that was made, the strides that were made there. So I love that Bruce Arians, a guy who was here in Indianapolis, who we're very familiar with here, and there is so much love and respect for Bruce, that he has created such a culture of inclusivity in Tampa Bay and showcasing how beneficial it is to have a diverse coaching staff. And that means, people of different genders, people from different races, different backgrounds. And so that's one thing for me, is not only as a female, but also to see the important strides that there are made for that have been made and were made yesterday for diversity in coaching from a race standpoint. I think is incredibly pivotal. I mean, the other I thought about this morning as I was listening to more and more coverage and the analysis, that I mean, how wild is it that all of the Bucks touchdowns came from guys who weren't even on the roster a year
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
I mean, just what they've built under the architecture of Tom Brady and his recruitment of bringing in Gronk and AB, and then they signed Leonard Fournette.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, and you cannot even fathom. And I'm thinking about this from a perspective of, we're also an organization that had a new quarterback come in the off season. So I have such great respect for the ability of the entire Buccaneers organization to take so many new pieces. And I mean, somebody said you couldn't even eat in like the lunchroom together, right? Like you would be able to in typical years, where you think about no OTAs, hardly any off season, minimal training camp, no preseason.
Mhm.
So what the Buccaneers were able to do, what they were able to build, is just jaw dropping. And it's so, I mean, it's such a credit to their entire organization, top down, the general manager, the front office, of course the coaching staff, and their players too, to put themselves in that type of position. I'd be so curious to know, what they did, the different things that maybe they had to do to get this offense all on the same page as Brady's coming into a new system. And then also the concessions that were made. Like, how much did Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich allow Tom Brady to kind of rework that playbook to play to his strengths? I mean, it's so cool. It is a time certainly to be celebrated. So much history made, as you mentioned, with Brady winning another Super Bowl, winning another MVP. It is just such a unique year. And most of all, above even all of that, I think for me, so impressed that the NFL got to this point.
Yeah.
Without the ability to have something like a bubble, you played every game during the regular season. You were able to play a postseason. You were able to have fans
Yep.
safely at a Super Bowl. Bruce Arians' 95-year-old mom was
It was
able to
there.
be there.
Yep.
So that's just a huge,
It's amazing.
yeah, just a huge testament to the dedication of the entire league, of all of the different organizations across the NFL to find ways to make this season happen, really with minimal COVID disruption. Of course, there were a couple of outbreaks here or there, but the way that they were able to mitigate the risk this season is huge. So, I mean, certainly congratulations, well deserved to Tampa Bay. And also Kansas City, we will see you back. There's no doubt that they're going to be a force and they're going to be a contender in the AFC and someone who the Indianapolis Colts are going to have to worry about for a long time coming behind Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just amazed. And shout out to the NFL, man. Women in sports. I'm a big advocate in women in sports, and that's the reason why I have a female co-host. I want a female co-host. I love the dynamic of the male and the female, and I love the way that women in sports is growing. And actually, we also had Demarius Smith on the show, the guy from the NFLPA, and that was
Yeah.
talking to him. And shout out to him. He made this happen too, along with Goodell. But I know you have something else coming up. So before we get to the Colts team real quick, I want to bring this up. This is really important. We're partnered up with the Hugh Jackson Foundation. This is helping prevent human trafficking and making sure the community is safer. So when you get a chance, I'm going to send you the page. I'm sure you know who Hugh Jackson is. And
Of course.
yeah, so I'm going to send you the page, and we're really grateful to be part of it. We're ambassadors for them, and we're trying to make a movement and prevent human trafficking. So.
That's fantastic. And that is certainly a area of emphasis around Indianapolis and within the Colts organization, because Coach Reich and his wife Linda have launched the Not Today Foundation. That is something that Linda Reich is incredibly invested in, is combating human trafficking, especially for children. So they recently the NFL did a piece and went through the building that the Reichs renovated to be the home base, to be the foundation for the Not Today Foundation. So that's their headquarters. I was going to say the headquarters of the Not Today Foundation. So that's something as well that aligns with Hugh Jackson Foundation, and something that the Reichs have a personal connection to. And you're going to start to see nationwide a push made towards spreading their mission and getting more and more people involved. So it's something that I've learned so much about thanks to the Reichs, and it's so great to see how many people are making this conversation more commonplace. It's something that a lot of people want to shy away from because it's difficult to talk about. So it takes really strong people, those who are in positions to thrust this into the spotlight and be sure it is getting the attention and the action that is much needed.
All right, last thing here. So real quick, I had Jared Powers on the show, Kamiko Toure on the show, Antoine Bate on the show, all former Colts. I mean, current Colt actually, Kamiko Toure. But so what was it? What's it like just covering this team overall and seeing legends come in and out? Obviously, Peyton Manning finally Hall of Famer. Congrats to him. So what's it like just covering this team? And obviously they're building the right way. And shout out to Ballard, amazing GM. And for you, and also speaking of diversity, Jared Johnson, coach on the Colts coaching staff, he's coming on the show Wednesday, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Fantastic. So Gerard's awesome. You'll have a great conversation with him. He's so fun. I'm so excited to watch him as his career continues to grow and he continues to earn these much deserved opportunities to move up within the coaching staff. But I have to say, first and foremost, the Colts, and this is something that I can say even as someone from an outside perspective when I was working in Indianapolis in local media and in other facets, it's first class organization, top down. It starts with the Irsay family and the fantastic example that they set with Carly, Casey, and Kaylin Irsay, and of course Mr. Irsay as well, in making sure that this is an organization that makes an impact not only on the field and creates a culture of success in that aspect, but also in terms of the impact that they have in this Central Indiana community. And that goes from the investment they make in this building and bringing the right people in across the board, from the football side to the business side. That goes in their outreach and all of the things that they do. I mean, I'm sure you follow Mr. Ursay, on Twitter, and
Yeah.
everything that he does. I mean, he just sent a woman and her dad down to Tampa for the Super Bowl and made sure everything was covered, to get them down there and be able to have them watch the game. He's had this fun ongoing banter where his economic stimulus package, where he's supported local restaurants,
Yeah.
donating to the food bank here in the community. So the response that there is across this community is incredible. And that's, in the challenging times and in the successful times. I remember when I was, working freelancing for the Indiana Pacers, the Colts were always, some of the first to congratulate the Pacers when they would have some of, their great playoff runs that they have, or, the great things that were done within that organization. Whatever it happens to be. I mean, Lucas Oil Stadium, we're now opening up and seeing professional soccer there with the Indy 11. So you see that the Indianapolis Colts organization, centered around the Ursay family, is incredibly supportive and doing whatever it takes to make not only this football team successful, but make Indianapolis and Central Indiana, the people who live and work in it, successful as well. And then when you talk specifically on the football side, I don't know that I've worked with two higher character men than Chris Ballard and Frank Reich.
Mhm.
And the example that they set across the organization in how they conduct themselves, in the professionals that they are, that's on the field, off the field, in media, on game day, whatever it happens to be, you see the impact that it has. They set such a great example and such a great standard for everyone else across this building. And it's so fantastic to know the investment that they put on the character of our players. Because, I mean, selfishly, how easy is my job knowing that we have guys who uphold such strong character and who do so much. I mean, it's great to talk to them about football, but also knowing the incredible investment that they have in their own nonprofit endeavors, whatever it is, the things that they're doing from a community outreach perspective, things that they doing, the other, passions that they have as well, and their openness to sharing about those things. I mean, I can't think of a time when it's been like, oh, I'm preparing for an interview. Oh, be sure that there's this thing we can't talk about, or whatever it is. So that's one of the things to me is, in each and every interaction that I have with our coaches, our front office, and our players, it's always so insightful. They're always so willing to share a wonderful perspective on a football side. And then also they're just fantastic people to get to learn about. And it's truly a privilege for me to be trusted with sharing their stories. That's the stories of their football careers. And then this, on the side of Colts production, things like Colts Life, where we share the stories of their families and that as well. So that truly is one of my favorite parts of the job, and the greatest compliment, the greatest privilege to me is to be trusted with being one of those who has the opportunity to share that perspective and share their stories and be trusted with those.
Yeah, amazing. The Colts are they're going to be a top team in the league next year for sure. So real quick, any inside scoop to the new quarterback in Indianapolis?
Someone I wish I knew, man. I do not. I don't have anything. What I can tell you is from our conversations with Chris Ballard is they will do their due diligence, and they will explore, whatever options are out there. They are certainly going to be sure that they assess and analyze, and then at the end of the day, do think as much as, a lot of people see like, oh, it's got to be fixed. You want an answer right away, and I understand, right, that desire to have that answer, and you want to know what's happening, but there will be no panic, no knee jerk. It's going to be one of those things where they fully vet every single option and ultimately come up with the best solution for the Indianapolis Colts. And that's looking ahead to the 2021 season and looking farther down the road as well.
Mhm. Here's my prediction for you guys: Carson Wentz or Deshaun Watson. There you
go. Yeah.
But
oh man,
yeah.
You think the Texans would trade him within the division? That's the thing. It's like, I mean, man, obviously, like, who wouldn't want a guy like Deshaun Watson? I'm just curious if Houston would be willing to have to face him and play against him twice a year.
Yeah, but there it is. That wraps up episode 695 with the talented and inspiring Larra Overton. Colts reporter / ESPN analyst. Go follow her on Twitter, all social media formats. She's amazing. She's hardworking, and she's the definition of a warrior. So keep up the great work. And
Thank you so much. And a huge applause to you. Also, 695 episodes. That is no small feat. So
yeah,
that is fantastic. Keep grinding and out. You're doing fantastic things. So fun to follow and see everything that you're doing.
thank you so much, Lara, for making this happen, and keep up the great work. And hopefully you get to meet my co-host pretty soon. So
Yeah, I would love it. Let's catch up here in the next few months. We'll do it again, and hopefully we'll have some more conversations surrounding the off season and the draft.
yeah. All right. Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.